Ruth, sorry.
It may be of interest for people to know that the 9, I suppose it is, ward councillors for Westbourne, Queen's Park and Harrow Road wards are using part of their ward council's budget, working with groundworks, to do a gardening project, and City West Homes is putting some funding in as well, to do gardening projects across the 3 wards involving people, and there's a range of things that are being done, but the basic point is to have a sort of cascade training effect of people teaching other people and their neighbours to do gardening of various sorts across the whole of those 3 wards. So it'll be an interesting thing to see whether that has a spin-off effect. It's meant to be sustainable so that when the funding stops, people will go on doing it. And we're going to have a second-hand tools exchange, so if you've got any leftover tools, do let me know.
Brilliant. I'm not sure it's a planning issue.
I did want to point that out myself.
Stephen.
One of the councillors did speak earlier about the management of space, and I think that's a critical thing. I also have seen, over the years that I've worked in horticulture, a large number of very expensive plans got together. It all looks marvellous for 5 minutes, and then somebody's forgotten about watering and who's going to look after it and that sort of thing. And it ends up as an eyesore. It does need to be, the new spaces, or the spaces that have been rediscovered, need to be managed dynamically. And I think that the sort of example that's just been spoken about there is something that very firmly needs to be looked at.
And it could almost be more of a community thing. So perhaps what we're looking for is, with open spaces, proper management plans for that involves the community.
As a professional horticulturist, I think that it's important that it involves professional horticulturists as well, because community things can tend to die away. A key person leaves, the dynamism dies for a short while. There has to be some mechanism by which the thing's rolled over, and it's not just left there.
And then we
Couldn't agree
move on.
more, but in the countryside we have adopt a roundabout. You know, why can't we adopt a public open planter, or adopt a traffic square or anything? I don't mind if I have, well, I don't want them to all to be, I better not mention a professional name, but cafes that are locally known. But, you know, it doesn't matter who does the sponsoring, and they could pay for the overview, and the locals can learn lessons from the professional.
Okay, well, can we...
I wanted to go back to the second bullet point, because this is quite important for us, for developing the policy, that we get any views around the table on there. There are going to be circumstances where we cannot get the open space on the site. Probably a good example might be where there's, say, a row of heritage buildings. You want it to take the same building line as those other heritage buildings, for example. And there's those kinds of constraints that for very good reasons we can't get the open space on site. And in terms of that, I mean, we could look at requiring, say, a payment in lieu against that. But I think the real issue is, how do we spend that money? What do we do with it?
Tree planting.
Tree planting? Okay, thank you. Are there any other suggestions around the table of what we do?
I just think it comes back to the person's point over there about identifying spaces that are already existing. It's that clump of trees where there's lots of paving between, which could be enhanced. It could be opened up. I think in such a highly built-up area as Westminster, it's always very easy to say, oh, we'll pave that over because it'll look very scruffy, or it'll save the weeding. And I think we should be looking at doing something more than that, and that might cost a bit more. It might cost a bit more long term. I think, again, the management and maintenance of areas like that are very important. But I think that it's searching for them within the area that's
I just wanted to clarify. So you're definitely saying that it's not only setting up the areas and turning them into something new in a new space, but also you would be happy to see that funding go towards the ongoing maintenance cost of those areas. Brilliant.
Sorry, the burst of ideas. I just wondered if any blank walls could have things grown on them, which I would turn to my professional, because I believe ivy on blank walls is not a good idea, but there must be something that you could grow on a blank wall that wasn't...
Virginia creeper?
Is that good for...
It doesn't damage it the same way as
Well,
ivy
there you
does.
are.
But
Well,
there are lots, so, you know...
Yes, but therefore I think if one could have a policy on perpendiculars to have some encouragement for greening them, whoever
Not just open spaces,
Yeah.
but also the living
Yes.
walls as well, and the greening of the city. Okay.
Tom, I think you were next.
My sort of reaction and worry is that you're going to introduce another tax on a developer, and developers are not necessarily my friends or vice versa, but we need them, and I think even the case you made, the argument you used for sort of saying why they should actually contribute to the fund because they're going to use up that bit of green space that was in front, that's a very bad one, and we've got the same problem already approved by Westminster, having given consent to Selborne House, where that bit of a very nice amenity space which sets the quality of that part of Victoria Street has gone in the new development.
I wasn't so much saying the loss of an area, I was saying if you had a major development that normally you would expect to have an element of public open space in it, but for some reason on one particular site it couldn't.
Then turn it down, it's not acceptable.
Reviews, okay.
Could it be linked to the number of family units in a development or something like that? Is there a kind of, do you do that anyway? Like a percentage of amenity space to the size of units?
We're looking for your ideas, so that, I mean,
think
that's
happens
certainly a
in
criteria.
in single house development, doesn't it, where you have to have 100% of the floor area for the garden, or 75% in a flat, or 50% in a studio.
What about commercial development? Does anyone have any views about their responsibilities to provide open space?
I think I said it before, I think that they should have a roof garden for their employees.
Westminster Council obliterated the space in front of what was the BP building in Buckingham Palace Road and allowed developers, I think it was Land Security or British Land, to put the building right out to the pavement. You know, instead of being a bit of room on a busy pavement, it suddenly became just an ordinary silly pavement.
It's quite a wide pavement outside the Google building.
But it's
It's-
what it was. We used to have planting areas in front of it too.
Yes, but they might have had those expensive. Anyway.
I'm sorry, I just on that one, you are absolutely right, and I support you 100%. And if the Home Office can do it and develop the site, the new Home Office, with space in front, amenity space for everyone to enjoy,
And the water.
and the reflection pool, so that's a very generous gesture to society as a whole. And what happened at the office, which is now occupied by Google, I think, it showed a plan. This is a good point for the planners and the councillors and planning committees. The plan for that building showed trees in front of it. And it showed trees which were so minuscule that if you actually looked at it, you realise there was no room for the head of the tree, there was no room for the trees to grow. And this happens time and time again on planning applications. And the landscape people will know about this, that they will have seen this happening. And I could give you many other instances.
Well, let's move on this one. Have you got enough?
Can I
thus
just
far?
add
sorry,
one more thing? If you're going to debate the use of open space for developers without, I'm afraid we don't agree on if you've got to do conservation in a replica building, you can't always give the open space, but that's the only exception. But if you're going to require them to do sculpture and open space, which might have enough room for growing something in, I think that's a debate that hasn't been resolved. Because on that pavement space, I think, of which you were just referring, there's an enormous great sculpture, which may or may not be to everybody's taste, but it certainly is removing the chance of having any open tubs.
I mean, Anne, are you suggesting that a piece of sculpture might be quite expensive and therefore there could be more, that money could be available for something green, for its maintenance going forward?
I couldn't agree more, but I don't want it said in my name, and every sculptor in the town will be saying, oh, she doesn't support art and she doesn't support sculpture.
Everything is a matter of context, as those of us who sit on planning are fully aware.
Could you, with a commercial development, link art contribution and public space contribution to